Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Soul Over Matter podcast. I am your host, Michelle, and Soul Over Matter is a podcast for souls along this awakening journey. And today we have a beautiful guest who I have followed and been inspired by for almost a decade. And we have Sylvester McNutt III, who is a author, podcast host, app founder, and I'm just really excited to have him here today and just flow and see what comes through our conversation. So, Sylvester, welcome to Soul Over Matter. Thank you for being here.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share and speak and be seen and heard and maybe we can create some magic for somebody listening.
Always creating, always, there's always that thread of magic. And I always ask and start off podcasts with guests of where did your story begin? Where did you really begin to feel that light bulb clicking in your brain? Yeah, we'll start there.
It's a great question. And I believe that where you are in life, you go through different iterations of the answer. And so I'm going to give you an answer that I've never given ever. Okay. This is the very first time I've given this answer because my thought process on it has changed. And so to be specific, you live in a very like egocentric world. You live in your body, you live in your brain, you live in your story. And so it's very easy to say that my story began when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old, which is about the time we start piecing together these memories of our lives. But the truth is that it began way before that, and so I feel like one of the things that we're terrible at um, is speaking on our ancestors, speaking on our family lineage, speaking on our elders who come before us, who faced battles that we would never understand, who overcame things that we couldn't even process, who lived in a different world than us. And I mean, it's just giving me goosebumps to even think about, my mother, my father, what they went through. Growing up in the 60s in America where, opportunity wasn't equal, like they had to face things that I'm not even privy to. My father went into the United States Army. He played baseball. He opened up a karate gym and taught self defense to all the people in the neighborhood. He was always he was a very like serious guy, but he was very funny. And then my mother, professionally, she was an administrative assistant, and my mother was all about education. She was the did you do your homework? Did you study parent? My mother was big on if you're going to do your work, do it correctly or don't do it at all. She was big on perfectionism, which is something I help people heal from because perfectionism is dangerous. But that's what she was big on. She was big on perfectionism, trying to do things perfectly. My dad, he was very big on discipline. He was big on, did you take out the garbage? Did you make your bed? Did you iron your clothes? I don't iron my clothes anymore, but when I was a kid, that was big in the 90s. So, did you iron your clothes? Did you make your lunch? Like just the little things. So from my dad, he was really big on discipline and order and structure. Obviously, being in the army gave him that. And from my mom, she was big on the intellect, how you present yourself, how you carry yourself. She used to always say, be mindful of your words. My mother used to always say that to me, be mindful of your words. Like be mindful how you speak, be mindful of what you're saying. So many people waste their words, right? And it's like you got to be mindful of your words, of what you're writing, what you're saying, what words are going through your brain. So, and we could keep going back to my grandparents before them. All four of my grandparents are from Mississippi. And so there's this connection with as American history is changing and as, Black people are leaving the South for better passages, better opportunities, they moved to Chicago, which is where my parents met, which is where I was born. So when I think of like, where my origin story started, it started from all four of my grandparents wanting better for their families, wanting families, And then it started with my parents even moving us to the suburbs, getting us out of the south side of Chicago, which was very dangerous and toxic and still is, and moving to the suburbs so we could have opportunities to go to some of the better schools, to be around parks, to be around a lot of recreational activities that children need to be around, being outside, riding bikes, playing tag, playing football, baseball, basketball, chasing girls. Like literally the girls in our neighborhood would run with us, would be chasing them, like literally just everybody just playing together, So like, I'm so grateful that my grandparents and my parents did what they did because they put me in a position to thrive, and um, there was some toxic stuff too, there was some downright, there was this movie back in the 90s called A Low Down Dirty Shame, it was a low down dirty shame as well, but we have to acknowledge like the efforts, that's been big for my healing process, is just acknowledging the efforts that people have made to try to help you have a better life. So when you ask me where I come from, that's where I come from.
Beautiful. I love that this is your first time answering that way. Makes it feel more potent, because we are the ancestors of the future, right? So it's like this continuation, and I've never heard that answer before, of really like starting from that origin of those strengths that we take, and the weaknesses, right? And the toxicity that you shared because of the struggles, because of what and who came before us, and the environments they survived. So beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Ancestry for me too has been coming up a lot. Because we are a lot of times, and we can talk about that. I know you do so much mindset work with your clients, and maybe you can talk about that, how a lot of our thoughts and patterns aren't even ours, right? They come from so far back in our lineage. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, a lot of what we're doing is repetition. You know, neuropsychologists have noted that we have about 80% of the same thoughts like every day, right? And then I've found this connection that people like Joe Dispenza has talked about in his work. He's talked about it, and I found this connection where the thoughts that you're having become your actions, and then your actions become what you're doing. It becomes an emotion. That's what Joe Dispenza will say. It becomes an emotion. And then if you look at life, that's really like the cycle of life: is your thoughts, your actions, your lived experience, and then your emotions. Like, how did that experience make you feel? It's like, oh damn, I want some cake. Well, you go get some cake. The cake was great. You feel great. And obviously we don't need to get into like the actual dopamine of the sugar and all that. Like, we don't have to go like that far into it, but it's like, well, yeah, that felt great. But it's like, it's also like, man, I want to get my six pack back. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to get cake. And I said no to the cake. I had an apple. It's like, well, damn, that felt great too. And now I got my six pack back. So that feels even better. So it's just all about, to me, it's all about just like having a mindful awareness, how you're choosing as many thoughts as you can. Obviously, we have so many subconscious thoughts and so many patterns already learned that some of our thoughts we really can't be aware of. But I feel like the more you become aware, the more you practice, like, okay, so do I really feel that way about myself? Like, do I really feel like I'm inadequate? Like, just challenging it, right? Like, once you challenge a thought, then you can recognize, like, instead of saying, oh, I'm inadequate because I made this mistake, now it's just like, okay, cool. What do I need to learn to overcome this? Or what do I need to learn to do better at this? Or sometimes you can have peace and just recognize, hey, I'm not elite at that. I don't know why we as humans feel like we need to be elite at everything, but that's not realistic for anybody. We're not elite at everything. You're lucky to be elite at one thing, like literally at one thing, right? But we have this expectation that we should be elite and competent at all things. And that's BS. I get, like, for example, the other day I was driving to the gym. It was like 105 degrees here in Arizona. I look at my car. I drive a Lexus, and so the little signal for like the tire pressure came on. So I'm like, man, why is this tire pressure? So I hit the detail button. The detail button will show you the actual tire pressure for each each tire. So they were really high, like 38, 37, 39, really high PSI, which is good. But my back right tire was like at 31. So I'm like, oh no, here we go. Like, here we go. If you own a vehicle, it's something every year. It's gonna be something. So I'm like, oh, here we go. So I drive for like maybe 5 more minutes, which is like 5 more miles. I look at the tire pressure; it's like 28. I'm like, oh no, I'm losing pressure. So now I'm on the freeway. So obviously I've had flat tires. Like I've been in situations. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Like, what do I do? Because I don't want the car to blow out, the tire to blow out, and be in a dangerous situation. So I was like, okay, get out at the next stop and look at the tire, get the data, right? So I get out, I look at the tire. Luckily, the way I parked, I saw the nail. There was a nail in my tire. I could hear the air coming out. So I'm like, okay, let's abort the mission. Whatever I had planned is gone. Okay, let's abort the mission. I got to get this thing home. It's 100 degrees outside. I got to get home. So I abort the mission, turn back around. For whatever reason, it went from like 28 to like 15 air pressure. And I'm like 10 miles from the house. So I already know, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't make this. Like I could make it, but it would be filled with like anxiety and stress. Mm-hmm. And I just did not feel like putting it on my body. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna pull over. There was a really big like Hyatt hotel. So in my mind, I'm like, this would be a cool place to stop because if worse comes to worse, I could go inside, get water, rest inside. So I pull over and I'm about to change the tire. Okay. Mind you, this is the opening week of NFL football. So I wanted to get back home so I could watch the Chicago Bears get a victory. And I'm looking at the tire, I'm looking at the jack, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not elite at this. That's what I told myself. I said, I'm not elite at this. I'm not about to be out here. As a man, it's like, no, get down here, lift your car up, change your tire, get your hands dirty, get gritty. Like that's the programming we get as men. And I'm like, okay, no. That's what I told myself.
No.
Like, no, I'm not doing that. I pay Geico. This is not a sponsored ad, okay? But I pay Geico every month, and I've been with them for like 10 years. I just said, man, there's a man driving in a truck right now who does this for a living, who is elite at this. And I'm already paying for roadside. So I just let all my stress and anxiety go away. And I just said, I'm not even going to put this pressure on myself. Call Geico, talk to this really nice lady named Mary, tell her the situation. And she's like, okay, we're going to send Jake on out. He's going to come help you. Jake pulls up. In your car, you have a jack that really isn't that good. But the tow truck drivers, they have a real jack. They put that thing under there, boom, boom, boom. 3 times your car is up, get your tire off. The man was out of there in 5 minutes. It would have took me over an hour to just get my car up in the sun. So that story, the purpose of that story is like just recognizing like you don't have to be elite at everything. And when I recognized this, the number one thing that it made me do is it let me ask for help.
Asking for help. Ooh, isn't that a deep wound for all of us? Not all of us, many of us, right? That it's almost like this trauma response, right? Of I have to do everything on my own. I should, right? That word should, that I'm a huge word person. I'm a speech therapist as well. And words are spells to me, like your mom, like words are potent. And when we feel like we should be good at everything, right? Or we should do things all on our own, and the stress and the anxiety, like you said, right? All these hormones that are pumping through our body that are just not good for us.
Yeah, and like at this point in life, I'm trying to find as much peace as possible.
Right.
Like you look into the like life is challenging, right? Life is hard, and then you look into the world externally, and you see more challenging, hard, very traumatic, dark things happening, right? That's obviously not the whole story. There's a lot of great things happening in love and purity as well. Like that's the whole story. But life is hard, And so to me, like my whole perspective is there and are there opportunities for us to enable peace to enable a mindset of peace. And I've recognized that, like, recognizing I'm not elite at everything has completely freed me, especially when you grow up in a place where you're expected perfectionist. You're expected to be a star athlete. You're expected to be, a scholar. You're expected to have manners. You're expected to smile when your elders say something to you and laugh at everybody's jokes. Like we grow up with all of these agreements and expectations. And this is why we're so drained by the time we become adults, because we had to agree to so much stuff that wasn't true to us. And so my big invitation for me is I'm going to be true to me at this point. If your joke's not funny, I'm not going to laugh. I'm not, if it's awkward, it's awkward, but it wasn't that funny. It's just what it is. It's like I'm not going to. I have this coaching program that I'm doing right now called People Pleasing No More, and it's just that it's whatever, or not everyone, but what a lot of people are suffering with is this need to please. And I'm a giver. I'm a lover. I want to help. I want to support. I want to be there for others, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of like my sanity, of my peace. In certain situations, yeah, there's probably some situations where you need to, you're running an organization, you have children, you're in a partnership. Yeah, there's situations where, yeah, you do sacrifice and you're like, you know what, this is for the greater good, right? But if you do this habitually every day, all day, you're just completely sacrificing every part of your integrity. It's like, well, no wonder you're drained. No wonder you can't sleep. It's like you don't have peace. My big invitation is I need peace. I need to find my peace and create it.
What's like one piece of advice you would give to someone who is healing from that perfectionist environment, that people pleasing, that you grow up and you're in your 20s, 30s, and you're like, I don't even know who I am because I've been so conditioned, right, to put on this mask, to show up for other people. How would you invite someone who's just beginning that journey?
Can you hear me clearly? I'm going to make sure you can hear me because
Yeah.
it's breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard pieces of your question. I think what you were saying is how do we invite someone who struggles with people pleasing and perfectionism? Like, how do we invite them to another alternative? Was that the question, essentially?
Yes, you're frozen. Can you see me, Sylvester? Can you see me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Okay. All right. Can you hear me? You got me?
Yeah, you're frozen though.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can hear you. If we have to turn off our
You got me?
cameras, that might help.
Okay. Here, maybe let me try off my Wi-Fi. I want to make sure. Maybe just use the 4K. Let's see. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So yeah, let's see. We're dealing with someone who perfectionism, people pleasing. I mean, there's a lot of entry points. There's a lot. When you're coaching someone who is struggling with this, there's a lot of entry points. It's really about getting to know the person. For some people, it's about discovering the root of it in their family system. Some people didn't come from a family system. May have came from a past relationship. For some people, it might be cultural. Like if you're an immigrant living in this country, your parents for sure were like, no, you need to work. You need to be this. So it's really about getting to know the person and just trying to figure out, okay, where did this come from for you? And then figuring out what's available to them today. Because like a person who, if you're people pleasing in an environment that you don't control, or you're doing it for your safety. So when you're a child, you're a teenager, and you're living with your parents, you're gonna people please for safety. So you don't get in trouble. So you don't get a whooping. So you don't get grounded. So you don't get yelled at. So you people please for safety. When you are able to control your own environment, or at least live in or in a stable, safe environment, and then you're still people pleasing, then it's different. Now that's like a pattern, right? That's like a choice, right? Like, for example, I'm people pleasing at work because I work 9 to 5, but here my boss is sending me emails at 8:30 when I'm supposed to be feeding the kids, or watching a movie with my boyfriend and girlfriend. And here I am responding to work emails. And it's like, okay, well, my first question is, do they pay you around the clock? No, they don't pay you around the clock, right? They pay you for certain hours. Okay. So the payment agreement has already developed your boundaries within the payment agreement. The boundary is you're going to work during this time and you get paid during this time. But here you are at 8:30 responding and you're not on the clock. You're not getting paid for this. So you are outside of the agreement, and actually your boss is outside of the agreement. So in that situation, it would be like, okay, let's get clear on the boundaries. Let's bring the boundaries back up. It's like, hey, boss, I love this company, love working here. However, I'm working 8 to 5. Text me, email me, call me, slap me on the back. Whatever our agreements are is good within 8 to 5. When I leave here at 5:01, I'm no longer on the clock. I'm no longer available. I need you to respect my boundaries because my peace of mind, my work-life balance is important to me. See, and I have this course called Build Your Boundaries. And one of the things that I teach people about boundaries is you have to check for agreement. So I just told you my boundary. And in my mind, you know my boundary. So I have to say this question. When you're setting up a healthy boundary with someone, you have to say this question. Do you understand what I just communicated to you? You have to check for comprehension. Just because you explain something great doesn't mean they get it. You have to ask for comprehension. This is step number one. When you take my course, Build Your Boundaries, this is one of the first modules, is you have to ask them, do they understand? Do you get what I just told you? The reason you want to do this is because you want them to say back, yes. Yeah, what you're saying is don't contact you after 5:01 because you want to be at home with your babies. You want to be at home with your cats, whatever it is. You're playing video games, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yes. Okay. So you're not going to contact me after 5. Cool. I love you. I love you for that. Right? Because I invited you to my boundary. You heard me. You acknowledged me. And now you get it. But if you don't check for understanding, you as the boundary setter have no evidence that they understand. So you have no confidence that this boundary is actually going to exist. And the purpose of a boundary is to bring more intimacy to the relationship. That is the only purpose of boundaries, to bring more intimacy. Even if I say, if my boundary is, if it feels like it's pushing someone away, the reason you're asking for a boundary is to have a more intimate space with them, right? Every relationship that we have is a vessel, right? Every relationship is a vessel. Like picture like a ship, right? And so when I say, hey, this is my boundary, I just put a window on the vessel. When you say, okay, I understand your boundary, we just put a sail on it now. It's like, and the more as a relationship, the more we dance with each other and try to understand like what feels good for you, what helps you, be you, what helps you be your best self, what helps you be in peace when you are around me, right? The bigger the vessel, the more beautiful the vessel is. So it's our duty as people who are people pleasing and lack boundaries, it's our duty to communicate what we need, to ask for what we need, to check for understanding. See, a lot of people, when you're in this habit of people pleasing and not having boundaries, you assume that other people will not expect your boundaries. You assume that asking for your boundaries to be seen is too much. I'm coaching someone right now. She lives in Dubai, and so we're talking about the people pleasing thing. And the story I gave you about the boss is a real story. And so I asked her, I say, why haven't you told your boss not to contact you, at 8 p.m.? Oh, well, if I tell my boss not to contact me, they're going to think that I'm not working hard. They're going to think I don't want it. They're going to think I don't want to be there. And they're going to fire me. So when you have these thoughts, you have to do this. This is called a redirect exercise. You have to redirect the thought. And so I said, is that true, what you just told me? She was looking like, huh? Why would he ask me that question? And so I asked her again, I'm like, okay, is that true? What you just told me, is that 190% true, what you told me? And she was like, well, right? So now it's like, okay, we're breaking the pattern, because that's what we're talking about. We were talking about earlier. It's like the patterns, right? Repetition rewires the brain. So if you repetitively break a pattern, you can rewire your brain. You can rewire your consciousness, rewire your habits. which changes your outcomes, which changes your emotions, which changes your life. So she was like, well, I guess, you're right. Like, it's not true. So I asked her, I said, so you're making this up. You made this story up that you're going to continue to people please because if you ask for what you need, they're not going to give it to you. They're going to think you're lazy. They're going to think you're weak and all these things. You made this up. She was like, yeah, I actually have made this up. So I said, okay. So step number one for her homework was this. I said, I want you to get crystal clear on the one boundary you want to set. You don't even have to worry about all of them. Just baby step this thing. Start with one. What is the one boundary you want to set? And she said, yeah, I just don't want to be contacted when I'm not at work. So then we went a little bit deeper and I said, okay, so how do they contact you? And there's some app. I can't remember the name of the app, but it's like an app. And I was like, okay. And you have two phones, right? Because you have a personal phone and a business phone. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so do you have to be like reauthorized again on the app? Like, can you just delete it? She's like, oh no, I'm authorized forever. She's like, I could just delete it. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, delete the app right now. Like, as we're talking, delete the app. You're not at work. You're not on the clock. And so part of your end of day business routine is to delete the app and close out any messages or contacts that you need. And that's your last communication with your workers. And then when you start your day, the next day, get the app back on and continue any type of conversation, And she was like, wow, she's, I don't know why I never thought of that. And the reason why she never thought of it is because she was telling herself, this is such a simple thing, but she was telling herself a story and she was staying locked in the story and staying locked in the pattern. So when you ask me like, okay, how do we work with someone who's people pleasing or, they have a lack of boundaries? We have to investigate. We have to start asking these questions. That's how you really got to start there. And then I would say to anybody listening, really question those stories you're telling yourself because they may not be true. They may not be true. Like the story you're telling yourself about what your friend is going to say when you say this one thing that you haven't said for 3 years, you don't know. You're right. They may respond the way that you think, but you also don't know. They may not respond the way that you think. And like that's the beauty of life and just all things relational. Is this is a dance. And we can't be afraid to step on feet and we can't be afraid to have our feet stepped on. The more you dance with someone, the more you realize like, okay, she's gonna step there. Okay, I'm gonna step here. Boom, boom. And then you're just flowing. After a while, you're just flowing. And it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And it's so much deprogramming, right? It's so much, I always say getting curious, with my own clients, like get curious, like come to it as a child, don't assume, don't think, oh, well, this, well, that. It's like all these stories. And then, yeah, we just start believing these stories and it's so subconscious, right? Like you said before, it comes from that survival. It comes from that time when we were 5 or 6 or, just having to survive. And yeah, it's like this light bulb that comes on sometimes and you're like, holy shit, like I can change my story. I can set this boundary. And like you said, it gives us so much liberation to really be who we are. And also, I say this a lot too. It's like when you set a boundary with someone and they react to that boundary, one, that's not really on you, right? Because you're really asking for what you need. And it sometimes usually invites them into how they are approaching their own boundaries, right? Usually people can respect you if they have their own boundaries and their own agreements and what they need in partnership and intimacy and relationship and friendship. And I just love that it builds this intimacy. It builds this strength of the relationship, because I think so many people are afraid, right? That fear just freezes us at times of like, I can't ask for that. Who am I, right? Who am I to ask?
Yeah, in most healthy relationships, they get better when there's respect, right? And when I use the word relationship, I mean all relationships, friendship, partnership, us working together right now, creating this conversation on a podcast. It's like when there's respect, the relationship gets better. It's easier to love someone you respect,
Mm,
right? And so if you are choosing over and over to not respect yourself, you're diminishing the capability and the potential of the relationship from a respect standpoint. And I'm willing to bet that most people, especially listening to this podcast, we're going to be choosing partners, at least we're trying to choose partners that do respect us. So we have a duty to them to make sure we're respecting ourselves.
mm,
It's like how can I it's almost like how dare you ask someone to respect you when you choose not to respect yourself. It's almost like how dare you? Like, and I say that, lightly, of course, but it's like, no, like, please respect yourself. And, that doesn't mean, just be stiff and rigid and don't have fun. And, it doesn't mean be super judgmental of yourself, because sometimes I hear people say things like, well, a woman who acts like that doesn't have any respect for herself. Like, no, this isn't about what society thinks. Oh, you respect yourself. No, no, this is about what feels good for you internal. This is your internal
mm.
respecting yourself internally, letting you be the guy, not this external backwards cosmetic aesthetic seeking society. You can't let this society be the grade point for your internal barometer of respect. Getting me riled up. I need to be on stage right now. I'm getting
Getting hot, yes.
yeah, I need to be speaking some life into some people on stage. It's been a while. I haven't done a speaking engagement since before COVID, and
Oh, it sounds like
yeah, I
it's
miss it.
coming.
Yeah,
This,
next year, 2023 for sure. I'm ready.
this is the pregame. I feel you. Yeah, that fire to be in person and that energy.
Yeah,
It's so different than online.
it's the
Um,
best.
yeah, no, it's amazing. What's coming to mind is yeah, that energy of following the crowd, like, oh, just we grow up thinking of how can I please everyone around me, or how is everyone else around me, right? And I also came from a family of immigrants, right? Like constantly giving, constantly pouring into everyone else's cup. And it's like you turn around and you look at yourself, and it's kind of like that holy shit, who am I? Kind of what we started with, right? And like where for you, you're an author, you're a podcast host, you're an app founder, you've done so much work. Where was that shift for you? When did that happen for you, of like starting to look inward and starting to put yourself first, right? Like be selfish. I like to say like being selfish is actually a really positive thing.
Yeah, I would say it was in high school. I was going through a lot at home. Very, very, very dark times at home. A lot of alcoholism, addiction, abuse, physically, psychologically, and it was just a lot. So at first, when you go through things like this, you think you're the cause of it. Like I remember blaming myself when I was a teenager. Um, but it didn't feel right. Like me blaming myself didn't feel right, and that's because I had a contrasting experience. Which my first 8 years of my life, I had the almost what we would call like an ideal family system. Two-parent household. Um, we didn't struggle. We weren't rich, but we didn't really struggle. We always had food. Always had clothing. I was fortunate enough to have a cousin who was taller than me, and he was born 3 months before me. So I always had hand-me-down clothes from my cousin. Always had school supplies. Like, was very fortunate, from a basic needs standpoint. But then, like when I turned 8 to about 14, like that age period of my life, that's where like the abuse came in, the alcoholism, and all. So I'm 14, 15, and I'm dealing with extreme anger issues in high school. And you get to high school, people tease you, they make fun of you. My last name is McNutt, so of course, to a bunch of teenagers, that was hilarious. And I'm like, so there was a lot of jokes. And you just know how it is in high school. It's savage energy. It's untamed energy. It's just wild adolescence. And we all know we were all in high school, so we've all seen how it can be. I went to a really big school as well, so it was very mixed. You know, it was very diverse. Um, and I just used to get in fights all the time. You know, I wouldn't let people talk crazy to me. I wouldn't let people challenge me. I wouldn't let people put their hands on me and, you know, take food off my life. It's not happening. Like you're not gonna bully me. I get beat up at home, so I'm definitely not getting beat up at school. You know, that was my mindset. But obviously fighting and not having like a relationship with your anger is not sustainable long term, you know. And I was very fortunate to have a really good assistant principal who she wanted the best for me. We're still friends to this day. I was
Hmm.
texting her the other day, like 2 days ago. She's retiring this year. And she just wanted the best for me. And she would be so disappointed. She'd be like, "Why are you in the office again? Why are you fighting again?" And it was one of those things where she had the empathy and she could understand what I was going through at home, that was causing the anger, that was causing me to overreact. But at the same time, she was like, "No, you have too much talent, you have too much potential. I don't want to see you wasting it." You know, so it was one of those relationships where like she was always trying to hold me to a high standard. And you know, I would say that it wasn't really me going inward on my own at that time. It was her pushing me. It was, even though my parents were the cause of the strife, they were still trying to push me to my excellence, you know. And so it's definitely like a combination of going inward and wondering, like, okay, what happened with my parents, and then the leadership that was around me with my teacher, my assistant principal, Mr. Smith, and then my parents. And then what really happened is when I joined the football team. You know, I went out for the football team because I was about to get expelled.
Hmm.
And it's so funny, like you look at my high school report, my freshman and sophomore year, I had 41 total days of suspension. 41. I had all A's and all F's. Like those were the only two grades I got. So, you know, typically you never see A's and F's. It's like you're either an F student or you're an A student, right? Or you know, you're getting B's and C's. But I'm all A's or all F's. So they're looking at my report, my freshman and sophomore year, and they're like, "The hell is this? Like, who gets all A's and all F's?" And I told them, I was like, "Yeah, I'm like, the reason I get A's is because I have enough energy to pay attention in those classes that I have A's in. The reason I'm getting F's is because I have anxiety and fear because they're at the end of the day and I have to go home." And so
Um,
like right after like 12 o'clock, I would just totally be like in shambles and in fear. My
mm,
trauma was just activated. So when you're in seventh period social studies and you're thinking to yourself, you know, they're talking to you about Thomas Jefferson or something, and you're like, wow, I'm about to go home. Will my parents be drunk today? It's like, well, of course I'm not going to get an A in that class because I'm thinking about survival. But when you get to school at 8 o'clock and you get home ec and science and math, it's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm happy. I'm ready to be here. This is easy. Let's go. Of course I can get an A in planetary, all this stuff, you know? And I remember them asking me, like, okay, well, clearly you're a smart guy, which was true because when I was younger, I was, well, it was true then. I don't know now, but it was true then. When I was younger, I was in, what do they call it? Not upward mobility, but it was like the gift. I was in this gifted program.
mhm.
So, you know, like educationally, I was very, you know, I was okay. And I think that was because of my mom. She was very big on that. So what ended up happening was, you know, they were like, "Hey, we're going to expel you because you can't keep fighting in our school." And they gave me a meeting. It was me, my mom, the assistant principal, and superintendent. They're like, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Look, when I moved out here, I wanted to play football. You guys didn't let me play football my freshman year because I moved here in October. So I became ineligible because of that. So I said, look, just make me eligible or show me what I have to do to be eligible for my junior season. I'll go out for the football team this year. Keep in mind, the football team was old and forever. Like they hadn't won a game. My eighth grade year, freshman year, my sophomore year, the varsity team just terrible. And it was kind of cocky to say this, but you know, you have to have confidence. And I was like, look, I was like, you put me on the football team. I'm a football savant. I understand the game. We're going to win some games. And I told them that. I said, we're going to win some games. And what ended up happening was they said, okay, we'll get you on the football team. You'll report next week and no more fights. No more fights, no more trouble. I said, all right, cool. And so I was like 15 at the time, 15 or 16. And this was one of the biggest moments of my life because it was really like the first time I really fought for myself, because when you're fighting other people, you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for your trauma. You're fighting for your wounds. This was the first time that I fought for my future and for me to have a name for myself. So I go out for the football team. And I'm going to fast forward through the whole football situation and just tell you this. We ended up winning games. We weren't great, but we won a lot more games than zero because they had won zero for the last couple of seasons. Get on the football team, we do well. We're bonding. And that's where I really found my voice, was being a leader of the football team, knowing I could encourage my teammates. Hey, be on time to practice. You guys are coming in late. We're already in line stretching, and it's like, all the things that my dad taught me, that's when that really came out. It's like having that discipline, show up on time, invest in your craft, be committed to it. Don't be distracted. No multitasking. Focus on the task, really investing in what you're doing. Stay consistent. I had a teammate, his name was Robert, and he was really overweight, out of shape. And you don't start your stretching until everybody does a warm-up lap. So I would always do 2 laps. I would do a lap on my own. I would lead the whole team. I'd do a lap with him because he would be the last guy. And like, I couldn't imagine what it was like to just be like the last guy, like that guilt, like you had my whole team up. Like, so I do a quick lap and try to beat everybody to compete with the faster people. Then I do another lap with him. I always lift him up. We're in the weight room. I'm always telling people, come on, you can do more. Let's go. Like, you got this, right? And that's where I really found my voice, was through athletics. And when I leave high school, they created this award for me. I won this award called the MSL, which was Miss Suburban League. That was the name of my conference. It was the MSL Unsung Hero. And I feel like that was like the best award I could receive, because what is an unsung hero? It's someone who's a champion of our cause. Maybe they didn't get the credit that they deserved or the acknowledgement, but like, us naming this person an unsung hero is like us saying, like, wow, like, this person's contributions made a difference. Like, I just heard LL Cool J. I'm gonna come back to that for a second. I heard LL Cool J. He's a famous rapper. He was talking about, I guess some new DJ said something like, the older people in hip hop are all broke and dusty. And LL Cool J was like, it's crazy the society we're in, where we think the only contributions you can have are financial. It's crazy where we think that the only, like, you're successful if you're rich. And it's just not true. It's just not true. Success is impacting people. Success is changing people too. Like, look, hell yeah, let's get paid. Let's all do that, because we do live in a society where we need money. 100%, sure, let's get paid. But we can't be suckers. We can't be fools thinking that because a person has more money, that means that they have more value. Like, as on a human level. Or because someone doesn't have as much money, it's like they're not worth that much. It's kind of like what I see with social media. It's like, oh, well, you don't have 25,000 followers and this person does. What does that mean? There's people with 700 followers who are millionaires. There's people with 700 followers who have a community of real friends and real people in their life. While there's people with 100,000 followers who have no friends and are lonely. And I'm not saying that, that's what it is for every person in that category, but like, we can't look at success and people's values with these, like, there's just these random things like, well, how much money do you have? How many followers do you have? It's crazy, like, you can make a real impact on someone by coming from your heart, by caring, by you finding your voice. So I would say what happened next, what really helped me just really find my voice is when I got to college. I knew I wanted to be a writer. I started studying communications. I walked on to the college football team. And, there was this girl I was dating. And I always have a notebook nearby me. I always travel with a notebook. I'm always writing my thoughts, my quotes, stories, poems. I draw, just put everything in my notebook. Like, that's one of my number one practices, number one healing practice is journal. And I was dating this girl, and I just used to write her love letters like every day. I never gave them to her. No, I gave her some, but most of them I didn't give her. But, I would just write her letters. I wasn't that great at expressing myself, because I was still healing from the trauma, healing from everything I went through. So I was very quiet and very introverted, and I just wasn't that great at expressing myself. So, but through writing, I could find the right words. And so she was being nosy, as women do when you date them. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, then just drawing some football plays." That was always my excuse because I'm on the football team. So I'm like, "Yeah, just doing something for football." This is in college, and she's like, "No, you're not." And
You found
she's like, "What
out.
are you doing?" Yeah. So I tried to keep my lie. I'm like, "Yeah, this is just some stuff for football. Don't worry about it." She's like, "No, it's not." So then we got into an argument. She's like, "Stop lying. Tell me what you're doing." I'm protecting myself. So I was like, "All right, I'll tell you." Like, just writing some letters, and that's I had to confess, like I'm a writer. And she was like, "Okay, well, do you want to read me something?" And I'm like, "Hell no, I don't want to read you." She didn't know I was writing about her. I'm like, "No, I don't want to read you what I wrote. It's embarrassing, like." So she just stayed on my case. She's like, "What is it? Like, share it." So I was like, "All right." So I was like, "Sit down and don't look at me." So I made her like look at the wall, and
Oh,
I'm like
that
standing at her
fear.
side. Yeah, I'm like, "Don't look
Yeah.
at me." So I just read her this letter I had wrote, and I look at her, and she's crying. She's just got like
Mm.
tears. She's all puffy. She's got tears. She's like shaking, and I'm like, "Oh shit, what happened? Like what's wrong? Like what's?" And she's just like, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced." I was just like, "Wow," it was like shocking, and so she was the first person that was like, "You need to do this. Like you need to, you need to care about this." So of
Mm.
course you kind of hear that. You're like, well, this is just my college girlfriend saying this. So like, of course she would say this because it's about her, right? But she was just on me. She's like, you need to like really care about this. So it was beautiful for me because while I was in college, I was getting a training as well, because I was taking like journalist classes, essay writing classes, fiction writing classes. I was taking speech classes, learning how to speak, learning how to do impromptu speaking, learning how to write out a speech, learning how to do copywriting, like all the things that I'm actually doing in my business now. I'm studying all these things in college, and then I'm writing because it's my passion while I'm playing
Mm.
football, and I'm writing like about what's going on in the world, what I see, what I experience, just like really learning to tell stories. And so it was like college for me, even though it was definitely a pain point, also is really where I found my voice because
Mm.
now I'm not under. I have no trauma around me that's happening from like my parents anymore. I'm on my own, which I wish I had more support from them when I was in college, but I was on my own. Dating this beautiful girl, going to a college that's a pretty good college that cared about communications, chasing my dream of being an athlete, and that's where I really found my voice. It's just always listening to what my life was asking me to do at that moment. And like
Mm.
I always thought, like, oh, I'm gonna be this great NFL football player. Football was a vessel for me to find my voice. It was a vessel for me to practice speaking to other people. It was a vessel for me to understand that the anger I had inside of me, I had to find healthy coping mechanisms. And football was the healthy coping mechanism. So when I stopped playing football, I continued to run, to do agility drills, to do lifting, to do, calisthenics, to keep my body moving because that helps you move the energy. That helps you deal with the anger. I have no anger issues now at all. I haven't had anger issues since I was like 21, and that's when I was still playing football. And that's what football taught me. Football helped me heal my trauma and it helped me heal the anger. The writing, journaling every single day since I was about 14 helped me process emotionally what was going on. It helped me with my emotional awareness to understand, okay, because I would watch like let's go back to when I was a young kid. I forgot to tell you this. I would watch my parents argue and I would take notes on what they were
Mm.
saying. I would look at my mom's facial expression. I would write down how she was reacting. I would notice, the words that they were using, and I would just write it all down like a story. And so it's kind of obvious when I'm looking back 20 years now, and I'm like, oh wow, like this is stuff I'm writing in my books. Like I'm writing about the communication model, effective relationships, red flags, people pleasing, boundaries, all these things. Like I'm writing about these things, how we can heal these things. but it was something that I was always deeply curious in when I was younger. So like when I look back on my life, and I'm only in my mid 30s now, or I should say in my late 30s. I'm 37 now, so that's late 30s. Yeah, it's like it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it just makes sense. Like the things that I was doing then have helped me create this career that I have and this the quote unquote voice that I have. But for me, it wasn't like, people always say like, oh, how do you, I want to get followers. I don't really know how to answer that. Like because
Mm.
I'm just doing what I really genuinely like to do. Like I'm really just doing what I like to do. The career that I have is actually my hobby. So it's like if I have to go get a real job, yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would do, but like at this point, I'm serious. I was actually on Indeed the other day, and I was looking at jobs, and I was just so shocked. I'm like, wow, I'm like these jobs are so much better than when I was first out of college, and like there's some really good jobs out there now. I don't know what I could do. Like, the hell am I gonna do? I don't know. The only thing I know to do is what I'm doing. I seriously appreciate this
You're living
space.
the dream. You're living the dream. I think, what is that? When you love your job, you don't work a day in your life, because you're literally living your hobby, right? You're working your hobby. It doesn't feel like a job to you because it's your passion. It's the word prime just came to me, like you were being primed, right? Ever since you were young, like all those experiences,
Mm,
all those scenarios, all those wounds, it helps shape, it helped shape who you are now. And I always say, we can't really teach on things unless we've lived through them, right? We who wants a healer or author or someone who's just, making up a story that they haven't lived? Like, no, you want to be taught by someone who's been in the freaking trenches with you, right?
mm,
It's
yeah.
powerful, and it's so beautiful to see. I love that hero journey, right? It's like you were leading your football friend, your playmates, in high school, right? By
Playmates, that's
leading
funny. Teammates.
teammates, or I say playmates.
When you say playmates, I'm thinking like Playboy playmates. And I'm like, oh,
I know. I'm
that's
like,
not the
that
team I
sounds
had.
funny.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
The
that's a good team, but that is not the team I
teammates. Clearly, I watch a lot of sports. Um,
had.
I also thought of like inner child, like playmates, like, little kids.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe we should
Uh,
start using that word more. Like instead of like, oh, this is my friend, like, oh, this is my playmate right
yeah, I mean, hey, I do a
here.
lot
Yeah.
of inner child work with myself, with my clients. I think it's so
Oh,
important.
nice.
So yeah, we get to play more, right? We get to be less serious, and it's
Hmm.
just really beautiful that, yeah, you were finding that voice, and you had these mentors, you had these people that, even partners can be mentors, right? That just saw you, right? Saw your potential. And
Hmm.
thank you for sharing that story, your stories, your many stories, because our stories help other people tap into theirs, tap into their, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, this other person has gone through it. And I think right now, 2.5 years into this new world that we're living in, to feel less alone is like one of the biggest things, right? We're human. This separation, like you said, you haven't been public speaking in 2.5 years, and it's this like illusion of separation. But like at the end of the day, we're all moving through a lot of similar experiences, but they're just not looking the same way, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love how you say that. Yeah.
And that's why I love these conversations, because they're conversations. It's like one person, at least one person, is going to hear this and be like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. I'm inspired, and we're also taught, like, don't talk about your stories. Don't talk, that victim. And it's like, it's not victim. It's embodying where we've come from and utilizing that for our own journey, for our own stories. And then if we help one person, right? Like, I'm an educator first and foremost. And I was taught like, hey, if you impact one student in your entire career, in your entire life, you've lived a good life. So to be that ripple and to follow your heart, right? That's, I feel like the gist of our conversation today is like, follow your heart, follow what feels good. You know, everyone is different. Every person has a different lens. You and I see the world so differently, right? And that's the beauty of being a human in this time. It's like, hey, we actually can be chatting and talking and looking at the world very differently and agree on that. Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I do want to talk about your app. Do you mind? I love that name. So what can you talk more about what your app is, where it came from, like yeah, just that little seed of your app.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now it's called Do You Mind? We are about 3 years old. That was started by Aaron Albert and Mark Groves. So Aaron is he's out in New York, and he's a serial investor and CEO, and he took one of Mark Groves' courses. I think it was like on breakups, and he just loved the course and how it really helped him. And so he reached out to Mark, and he was like, hey, can we make this like more accessible somehow, for more people? And so they got to having a few conversations, and they just came up with this idea to create an app where, some of the world's top experts, relationship counselors, therapists, authors, Brandon Collinsworth, who he created the Nike yoga. He brought yoga to Nike. Like Mark and Aaron got together and just said, hey, let's just get a bunch of like some of the top experts together to create this emotional wellness app where it's great. You can follow people like us, and like you, it's like you can follow people like what we're doing online, on a Twitter or YouTube, on an Instagram, on a podcast. But let's just be honest, with social media, you have to play a game. There's algorithms. There's a bunch of nonsense you don't want to see. Even if you follow the exact account you want to see, they make you see things that you don't want to see, right? So it can be very distracting and very compromising, to your experience. If you're trying to personally develop, and let's just say you want to develop yourself from healing from grief, and let's just say you follow 10 therapists online, right? But then you got people who created your grief on the same account. You got different family members and friends, and then you got Fox News and CNN and whoever else, and they're talking, and it's just like, okay, I'm trying to heal. I'm following these therapists online. They're helping me. It's like, okay, I see a therapist post about grief. Then the next thing I see is a booty picture on Instagram, or you see some guy's abs or something. You're like, okay, well, damn, this has nothing to do with my grief, right? It can just be a very distracting experience. So they created the app during the pandemic, is when we got started, because that's when we felt like, wow, like this is when we need it the most. Like people are really suffering. People are losing jobs. People are losing people. The health scare that everybody went through. I shouldn't say everybody. Everybody had a different reaction to it, but most people had a health scare. I live in a red state, so I live in Arizona, and I know we're not gonna get political here, but Arizona was one of those states that was kind of like Florida and Texas. We're just like, all right, we're gonna shut down the first month because everybody is, and then after that, live your life. That's kind of how it was here. Which for me was a good experience because it's hot here. You got to be able to go outside. So back to the app. So we started like 2 years ago, and just keep growing, and we just started developing a team. We have a head of product, we have a head of marketing, we have engineers, built a customer service team, just like really built a company behind it. It wasn't just like let's just make an app and put it out there. It was very well thought out. We brought on a lot of different experts, not even a lot, I would say more experts that are, trying to do the work that we're trying to do, which is make a big difference on people. Last year, Aaron and Mark were able to go to TechStars, which for startups, TechStars it's a place you go to and you pretty much are pitching your app to all these different investors, and you get a report card, you get a ranking. I wasn't there, so I don't know every little detail about it, but I'm given what the information I was given. And so we found a partner. We found a partner. Their name is Listen. So they invested, and they invested in our company, which was amazing, because then that allowed us to expand and like pay for marketing. And so now we're at a point where we have like real runway. Like we have the ability to really make change, to really impact people like in a positive way. Everyone can't afford therapy. And I'm not saying that this app is a replacement for therapy. Everyone can't afford therapy, but if you could pay $15 a month and you can get on there with 10 different therapists who are talking about relationship, healing, grief, all types of things, all the topics, then it's just like, wow, like I have this in my pocket. Like literally this month I lead meditation on the app every Tuesday. So we come in there, we do a meditation. I'll have some words. I either read from a book or I'll do a little sound bath and just hold that space. We have someone like Dr. Alexandra Solomon, who she's a professor at Northwestern. She's an author. She's incredible. And so she's coming on there and just giving all types of wisdom from a professor of relationships lenses. It's just like you don't always get that type of access, It's like, but people have so much knowledge, and that's why we created the app. Another person we have on there is Vienna Farron. She's one of the top licensed marriage and family therapist counselors in the world. She's out of New York. And so it's like to be able to like listen to her talk about marriage and family. And we all know each other too. Like that's the thing. We've all been able to build a relationship, and like I know Deanna. Like I know her husband, Connor. Like me and Connor in a men's group together, and so like I know that her work is authentic. Like she is integrating the things that she's teaching. She's not just saying, hey, these are the principles that work. No, like she's doing it. She created a family from this stuff. So I know it's real.
She's
And then like
walking the
Mark
walk.
Rose.
Yeah.
She's walking the walk.
Talking the
Mark
talk.
Rose is on there. This dude is one of the best relationship, truth spitters that there is. Always trying to invite people, into their space. And there's so many people, I don't want to leave everybody out, but there's just so many good people on this app who are just trying to serve and trying to teach. And yeah, so if anyone's listening, the app is called Do You Mind? By the time this comes out, I'm just gonna let you know we're rebranding. We're gonna have a name change soon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you're in the future, if you're listening to this in like 2 years, and you're like, oh, I can't find the app. Do you mind? I can't announce the name. Just come find me, and you'll
look at the show notes and check out Sylvester's Instagram.
Yeah. Because and so I think this is cool too. Is like we've been an app for 2-3 years now. We have funding. We have a company. We have ethos. We have everything we're doing, but we're 3 years in, and we're pivoting. We're making a change. We're making a rebrand, and I feel like that's such a beautiful invitation for so many people to recognize. It's like these companies pivot all the time. Companies change all the time. They change ownership. They change your mission. Change your custom. Like, why do we feel like we need to stay the same? Like we can rebrand ourselves too. So I don't know. Maybe I needed to hear that. I think I needed to hear that on a personal level, and I think that's why I said that.
I think many of us needed to hear it. I'm always pivoting. Yeah. But it's that fear, right? It's like fear of change, fear, right? But that's so beautiful, and I love that you say them, right? Because that's that authentic, heart-centered leadership. Because, like we said before, you can. I'm very psychic, and I can just open a page on Instagram and there are 100,000 followers. And I just look at that person. I'm like, they're not, I could tell they're not living that.
You can feel it. You can feel their energy.
Yeah. They're not embodying their mission, their purpose. And no one's perfect, right? We're all human, but if you're teaching to others, right, you gotta walk the walk, you gotta talk the talk. And I've called myself out on it. Like I have a episode from last year where I was called out on that, and it's important. So yeah, thank you for sharing about the app. And that's the beauty of technology these days, is that we have so much at our fingertips and we have so much access to knowledge. And
Mhm.
that is definitely the pro of it. And Sylvester, we could talk all day. I have thoroughly enjoyed hearing your story, your authenticity, your leadership, your voice. It's been a pleasure to have you on Soul Over Matter. Where can people find you? Where can people find your programs, work with you? Sell yourself, my friend.
Well, look, it's great to come on here. I don't get a million podcast invitations, but I get a lot. And I mean, the truth is, I don't want to do all of them. Truthfully, it's just, um, you know, it's a lot of giving. You're opening up to people and telling a story, sharing an education, just sharing whatever you're sharing. And so, whenever I can say yes to a podcast, what I recognize is I'm saying yes to the host. That's what I'm saying yes to. It's not really the podcast audience because I may never meet. I mean, hopefully I meet some people from your audience, but really what you're saying yes to is the host. So I appreciate you for creating a space and listening and just asking the questions and just being so thorough. Like I really appreciate that. As far as selling myself, all right, this is what I got for you. I'll sell myself. I'll sell myself. A lot of people struggle with this, but no, I'll sell myself. See, the reason why I'm good with selling myself is because I chose a job in products that I feel good with. Like even working at Mind, it's like it's a company I feel good about. In my heart, I like the people, I like the mission. It's hard for me to do work when I'm like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? So obviously, we just talked about Mind. That app is going to serve you. If you like an app that can put some good energy on you, give you some wisdom, I would say do that. The best thing you can do is come on my email list because let's just be honest, social media, we don't control that. So the way you can get on my email list is go to my website, SylvesterMcNutt.net. Typically on my email list, I send affirmations every Monday. I usually send out a new podcast episode on Mondays. Um, Yesterday, I sent out a really long letter on boundaries because we're in boundary season right now. And then I have a coaching program coming up called People Pleasing No More. So that we're going to be doing that this winter. So I can't wait to do it because man, people please. It's one of those things that makes me mad. Like it actually makes me mad because, and like I'm not mad at the person for doing it. I'm just mad that people get stuck. And like I know that I have the tools and the wisdom to help them get out. And I'm mad because I can't help everybody get out of it. You know what I mean?
The
It's
giver
like if
in
you're running up a
you.
mountain. Yeah, like you're running up a mountain and there's 1,000 people behind you and they're in the mud. The only thing you're thinking is like, shit, how do I get these people out of the mud? Like I need a helicopter, I need a plane, I need a truck. I gotta get these people out the mud. So that's where my anger comes from, is because like I just want to get people out of the people pleasing patterns because when you give with boundaries, like and when you give knowing your energy, it just feels so much better. It's just so much more sustainable. It's so much more, it's so much healthier. So anyway, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this subject. But yeah, the class is going to be called People Pleasing No More. So that's coming out soon. So I would say I got a podcast. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Just find me. Whatever you like, I'm there somewhere. I'm represented. If you're like, no, I don't do social media and I'm only on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn too. Help me find a job. All right. I'm there
You
too.
can run, but you
I was like,
can't
are you
hide,
on
Sylvester.
LinkedIn?
You're everywhere.
I'm about to add you on LinkedIn right now. I'm on there. I love LinkedIn.
I actually haven't been on LinkedIn in a while. I've been called to get back on. Yeah, but thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I love your passion. Yeah, I mean, you were one of the first people I followed, like back when Instagram wasn't even really Instagram yet. So it's just been a pleasure, yeah, hearing you speak and having you here. And yeah, everyone go follow Sylvester if you're not. I mean, every time I scroll and I see a post from you, it's just a little gem, a little like a pause in my day, if that makes sense. Like it makes me think. So thank you. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being here and giving us your time and your energy. And yeah, I will see you soon.